Good morning, class. I've titled this relatively brief video Religion, Magic, Science, and Cereal, and hopefully it provides some food for thought for the discussion, our first discussion, which will be due on June 5th. So let me go ahead and read the discussion question really quickly, and then I want to make an analogy that hopefully helps to analyze a few of the aspects of this question. Let me go ahead and read the question now. What are some of the distinctions which Carmody and Brink make between religion, science, and magic? Do religion, magic, and science ever have competing truth claims, according to the definitions which Carmody and Brink provide? Do you find anything problematic about the distinctions they make regarding religion, magic, and science? So the first part of the question is relatively straightforward. They do provide detailed definitions and and aspects to religion, magic, and science. And these distinctions are quite helpful and useful. And so, for the first part of the question, when you're discussing it, just be sure to list those distinctions and associate them with the right terms. Now, for religion, they've supplied a definition which is quite thorough in many ways and helpful for thought. This definition explain that religion is a system of rituals, doctrines, ethics, symbols, and and myths for the expression of ultimate relevance. And then in the introductory chapter of Ways to the Center, which is the book we'll be looking at for this discussion question, they contrast and in a sense compare religion to both magic and science. And so for the first part, definitely list some of the characteristics of religion that they associate with it, as well as with magic and science. Try to ask yourself, why is something, whether it is a field of study, what we might call a ritual, an aspect of a behavior, why would it be considered religion as opposed to magic or science according to these definitions? And also, do religion and science and magic ever make competing truth claims? And this aspect of the discussion will take us into our next section in our second week, which I've entitled The Early Anthropologists. It'll particularly, Early Anthropologists of Religion, it'll particularly look at the work of E.B. Tyler, James Fraser, and E.E. Evans Pritchard, in which they'll look at this aspect of magic, religion, and science. And the earlier anthropologists, particularly Tyler, he'll have a particular system in which he does think they're making competing truth claims in a particular paradigm. And when you look at it that way, either in his case, one is correct, that being science, and the other two are wrong, those being religion and magic. Carmody and Brink seem to provide a different way of structuring this, and to a certain extent, E.E. Evans Pritchard does too. And before we get into the early anthropologists, it might be helpful to look at what Carmody and Brink claim to be distinctions here between religion, magic, and science. So this part of the discussion will be helpful too. Try to give some thought to that. Now, the third part, and I think this is the most interesting, particularly later on, we'll get into some of the things that Wittgenstein says about concepts themselves, prototypical and classical concepts, which we'll talk about later. But one of the things to ponder is why is some phenomenon put into one category, labeled in one way as opposed to another? Why is a certain activity labeled religion, another labeled magic, and another labeled science? And for that, I think it might be helpful to approach this via an analogy. And so for this analogy, I'm choosing cereal. And we don't, for philosophical purposes, we're not really focusing on cereal to focus on cereal, but rather we're going to sort of use this as an analogy and then apply it to categorizations made between religion, magic, and science, which is part of the question. So we have a certain cereal. I just went to the store, so this is puffed wheat. It's in a bag. That'll be relevant in a second. And we can all think of varieties of cereals. We can think of cereals or Rice Krispies or lots of things. So they're all cereals. They usually come in boxes. That particular one came in a bag. And we can think of all the activities associated with cereal. And we can ask ourselves in a similar way, but perhaps more trivial. It really depends. Why is something a cereal and something not a cereal? And I thought a question or a contestant for that, why is something cereal and something not cereal, might be Cracker Jack. Now again, so I got a copy, not copy, a actual bag of Cracker Jacks. Now again, this used to come in a box, and there used to be a prize. There still is a prize in this. The box was smaller. It was about this big, but it was smaller than a box of cereal, slightly smaller than a box of grape nuts, which was also another type of cereal. And I've often wondered, well, why is Cracker Jacks not a cereal? It's made out of the similar ingredients as cereal. It comes in a box, even though this one came in a bag. But as you note, cereal can also come in a bag, right? Why is this not cereal? Same ingredients. Many cereals have prizes. This also has a prize, right? And so this is an interesting question. Why is not cereal? I asked the cashier at Stater Brothers when I purchased this, and she just said it could be cereal. You could put anything in milk, and essentially putting it in milk was a functional definition for cereal. So could this be cereal? This is interesting. Perhaps it could be cereal. What makes one thing cereal and one thing not? Maybe if we just did cereal type activities with it, right? So if we imagine this as a refrigerator, I put it on the top of the refrigerator, I eat it in the morning. What if I were to open it up, apologize for the noise, pour it in a bowl, pour some milk in it. I haven't actually tried this, so I'm not sure how it's going to taste. But it has all the same ingredients as cereal, to a certain extent. Let's see if it works. Does this make it cereal? Now, if I'm... It's actually pretty good. If we did cereal type activities with it, would that make it cereal? What makes one food cereal, one food not cereal? And we do other things. So Rice Krispies cereal, and we can eat cereal without milk. We often do that. We just put it in a bag and eat it as a snack. It's still called cereal. But when we make Rice Krispies into Rice Krispie treats, we don't really think it's cereal anymore. It's become something else. Can we think about religion, magic, and science in this way? This, I think, would be the interesting part of the discussion. What in our mind designates something into one category and not another? For cereal, it might just be that it's in the cereal aisle as opposed to another aisle. The Cracker Jacks were in the aisle with the chips and the soda. It wasn't with the cereal. But had it been, would that have made it cereal? What if we just eat it with milk or only at breakfast time? Would that make it cereal? What, in a similar way, in an analogous way, makes something religion as opposed to magic or science? Carmody and Brink do supply some criteria. For your discussion, can you think of others? Is there a certain activity we might deem religious, which in another context might just seem like magic? Is there a fundamental distinction between religion and magic? Might be another question. And if so, what is that distinction? So these are thoughts to consider during this discussion question. Also, religion and magic seem perhaps more closely related than religion and science or magic and science. What makes this relationship closer? Is that true or not? Could a certain activity be considered religious in a certain context? But if put in another context, could it be scientific? And this is interesting again when we go back to the second part of the question. Explain, do religion, magic, and science ever make competing truth claims according to these definitions? So hopefully this helps you have some further food for thought for this discussion question. I look forward to hearing your discussions on the Canvas post. Remember, it's due at the end of the day on June 5th. and email me if you have any questions about it, or post the questions on Canvas. Either one will work. Take care. Hope you have a good morning and the rest of the day.